2022 Forum. While we wish we were in person with all of you, we appreciate your resilience while we continue to navigate the pandemic into, yes, a third year. It was just about this time in 2020 that we started hearing news of the COVID-19 virus. So if you think about the duration, it is a long time, and here we are, year 3. Everyone at the Portland Business Alliance hopes you are well, your families are well, your colleagues are well. A recording of today's forum and links for the key resources that might be mentioned will be available on our website later today. Of course, these events could not happen without the support of our members, and we have some incredible sponsors that I would like to thank today. Let's start with our forum series sponsor, KeyBank and the Portland Tribune. Today, joining us from KeyBank is Jason Frankel, Digital Critical Initiative Manager. Welcome, Jason.
Good morning and thank you. I am Jason Frankel, Digital Critical Initiative Manager over at KeyBank, and I'd like to welcome everybody joining us today as we look forward to an exciting 2022. Optimistic that a return to normal, whatever that may actually look like, is within our reach. On that note, I'd like to thank the Portland Business Alliance for all the work that you've done under these challenging circumstances to ensure that we're still able to meet in some fashion. I know we're looking forward to turning the corner as we go into 2022. And thank you to the members for joining us virtually today. It looks to be an exciting topic surrounding the construction surge planned in Portland. I can remember as a kid growing up, and when I'd hit or come across a construction site, the sounds, the trucks, the dirt, the noises, I always knew something exciting was coming. And I can still say that today. Something exciting is coming. And as we know, construction is that lifeblood of the economy. Whether it's a new building rising up or a renovation that will bring an existing building back to life, or even a new bridge to help ease the traffic, it represents the promise of something new coming to our beloved city. But we also know that the construction phase can cause upheaval as we wait for it to come to fruition. And that is exactly why I'm excited to hear from this noteworthy panel who's going to keep and help put it into perspective the impacts of the looming expansion on our economy, our transportation system, and communities as we grapple with issues like equity and investment. Now let's turn our attention to the panel the Portland Business Alliance has assembled today to discuss the interests and responsibilities of the many stakeholders who are helping usher in this chapter of Portland's history. Andrew, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Jason. And of course, to KeyBank for your ongoing support of this series and making it possible year in and year out. We do appreciate all your support. And now I'd like to thank the Portland Tribune. And joining us today from the Trib is Dana Haynes, Editor-in-Chief, in from Mark Garber. Dana, it's great to see you. Happy New Year.
Good to see you and Happy New Year, Andrew. I'm speaking today for Mark Garber, our publisher and president, who's working on a major project to enhance the digital first future of the Portland Tribune and the other local papers within the Pamplin Media Group. I'm told we're talking about cranes today. In full disclosure, I was the communications director and speechwriter for Mayor Charlie Hales, and my boss loved cranes. He used to say that if your route is blocked because of a crane and you have to reroute, rejoice. It means something big is happening. We're living in the weirdest recession any of us have ever known. It wasn't caused by debt, as was the Great Recession, but by a pandemic, which means the economy is rocketing back. It took us 7 years to recover the jobs lost in the Great Recession. And according to Jules Rogers, our newly minted business editor at the Tribune, whom y'all got to meet, in 2021, Oregon employers added 100,000 jobs. And as of November, we'd regained 4 out of 5 jobs lost in the spring of 2020, 4 out of 5. And speaking of cranes, the construction sector is robust. The industry employed about 114,000 total workers in Oregon during November, which is 500 more jobs than in February 2020 during the height of the building boom. So today's topic could not be more timely. We appreciate the opportunity to be here for the Portland Tribune and Pamplin Media Group. Thank you. Back to you, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Dana, and to the Trib. and love that perspective from our former mayor. So thank you for sharing that. And now I'd like to welcome the chair of the Portland Business Alliance and president of the Oregonian Media Group, John Maher. John, welcome.
Thanks, Andrew. And thanks to everybody for being here this morning. Welcome to our January forum, Cranes on the Horizon, Portland's next construction boom. It's wonderful to be 6 months into my tenure as chair. We've just come through the holiday season, and Andrew, I can't thank you enough for this mug. I know Vanessa didn't get one. I'm sure Dave Robertson didn't get one, but I really do appreciate this. And as we head into the new year, I'm so excited about where we are in PDX. We're in the middle of a massive expansion. The panel is going to talk about that. We've got the I-5 Columbia Crossing. We've got Rose Quarter projects and funding from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And that represents a generational investment in our region's transportation system. Challenges to be sure, but a super exciting time to be in Portland and to be in Oregon. The proposed redevelopment of the Broadway Corridor, OMSI District, and Lloyd Center are moving through the pipeline. We know you're going to have questions for this great panel about these projects, and we want you to make sure that you share those questions with us by using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your Zoom window. So the Q&A tool is different than the chat tool. Q&A tool for questions, that's the only place we're going to be able to find them. If you want to communicate with everybody or make a comment or something like that, chat tool is absolutely the way to do that. Questions in the Q&A tool. When you use the Q&A tool, please be sure to include your full name, your organization, and the location of your business so that we can reference that during the discussion. I'd like to welcome today's panel and hand it back over to Andrew.
I'm so happy that that mug made it to you in time for this forum this morning, John. And I share the cost of it with the entire employee base of the Oregonian Media Group. So that is a group contribution. So congratulations on being the best boss. So good morning again to everyone, to all of our attendees. And I'm really particularly excited about this conversation, talking about looking forward, looking at the big picture, and looking at the potential that all of these projects, organizations, and individuals represent. Is an exciting way to kick off 2022. So we're going to start with some brief introductions, and I'm going to call out your names and ask you to join us. Just share what your name is, who you are, what companies you represent, and the projects that you're working on. So we're going to go a little round robin here. I'm going to start with Orlando Simpson.
Of course, Andrew, you'd start with me. Good morning, everybody. Orlando Simpson, CEO of CORE, which is the acronym for City of Roses Disposal and Recycling, a business that this year we're going to be celebrating our 25th year in business, as my father started it back in '97. And I think a lot of the work and questions I'm going to be involved in today is going to be tied to the work I do as a commissioner and as vice chair of the Oregon Transportation Commission, as we had passed a historic transportation bill back in 2017, and now those funds are now being put to work. So looking forward to sharing my thoughts and perspective on the big prize in the center of the city, the Rose Quarter Improvement Project.
Thank you, Orlando. And I'm going to toss it next to Kimberly Branham, who is on brand and on point with her background today. So Kimberly, over to you.
Andrew, can you tell what project I'm talking about today? Good morning, Kimberly Branham, Executive Director of Prosper Portland. We're the City of Portland's Economic Development and Urban Development Agency. And we've got a lot going on, key projects in Lentz, for example, and in the Central East Side. But this morning, I'm going to be focused on Broadway Corridor, which encompasses the 14-acre site of the former post office, as well as some of the adjacent properties. So thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here, Kimberly. And now I'm going to send it over to Erin Graham. Erin, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Erin Graham, the president and CEO for the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry in the Central East Side. And I'm really excited to share more about the OMSI District project with you all this morning, which is an exciting new development that has been in the works for a while, but we are now on the brink of making it happen. And I look forward to sharing more with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now off to someone I share a barber with, Curtis Robinhold. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Andrew. Actually, I do not loan you my trimmer. I'm my own barber. I'm assuming I'm not your barber, but we don't need to go there. Good morning, everyone. Curtis Robinhold, Executive Director of the Port of Portland, here today to talk particularly about our work out at PDX Next. I know it's something that everyone has experienced firsthand over the last couple of years, and for a couple more years to come. It's about a $2 billion public project covering the broad base of airport infrastructure.
Thank you so much for being here, Curtis. And Greg Johnson, over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Johnson. I am the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program Administrator, and this is a $5 billion undertaking to improve the crossing and replace a 105-year-old bridge across the Columbia River. So this is a conversation that has been going on for 25 years or more, and it's time to get it done.
All right, so thank you to all of you for being here. And I want everyone that's attending or really viewing this forum to understand a couple things. One, each of these individuals is of course representing a significant potential investment or active investment in our community. Simultaneously, they're also leading significant entities and organizations and efforts on their own. So I just want to say thank you to each of you for all that you're doing for our community past these projects, because it's impressive to be both the leader of an entity and then also working through transformative work. So just kudos, hats off to all of you. I'm in your fan clubs, and I want to start and pivot into the direct aspects of the projects and the insights that you want to offer. And I want to start by pointing out that if you put in aggregate all the projects together here, you're talking about over $10 billion in investment in this region, from private lending to federal dollars. That's a big number for Portland, and not just a big number, but also the positive impacts and outcomes these projects deliver cannot be understated. So let's talk. What do we need to know about your projects beyond the dollar signs? And looking at this through an equity lens in particular, how does your project include those who have traditionally been left out of the conversation? And I'm going to go backwards. We'll start with you, Greg, and then we'll circle backwards through the group.
Thank you, Andrew. So the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program is dedicated to embedding equity into all that we do. We heard from both communities on each side of the river, both in Portland and in Vancouver, that this was an important core value, that the history of transportation throughout the country has been spotty and sordid in how folks of color, of low income, how their voices have not been reflected in mega projects. So that was one of the things that was communicated to me as I was coming on board, that is a priority. And having personal experience with being relocated by a transportation project early in my life, I've always had a sensitivity to make sure we are including all voices to be heard in the discussion, and that the communities of concern just don't absorb the impacts, but they also see some of the benefits that can come from programs like this and of this size. So we have established an equity advisory group as well as a community advisory group that reaches into the community and makes sure those voices are heard. And the equity advisory group actually came up with a definition for equity for our program. And it specifically applies to the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. So we're reaching out to the BIPOC community, people with disabilities, limited English proficiency communities, houseless individuals, which is, not a new phenomenon, but reaching out to them has been something that has not been done on other projects before. One of the key demographics that we're also reaching out to are young people. And I tell them, folks of my demographics, yeah, we may drive across this bridge for a few years, but young folks are going to be driving this for a number of years. So we have focused on equity and not just a narrow shaping of what equity means. So this is important to the communities, and we are committed to making sure that this is reflected in all of the work we do. So with that, I'll be quiet and listen intently to others, because once again, I'm not above stealing ideas that others may have. So
thank you so much for that, Greg. And Curtis, let me toss those questions to you. What this is, you're an active project right now. So the work is being done as we speak. So talk us through what got you there and bring that equity lens into the conversation for all of us.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andrew. We are indeed well into what's really a 7-year-long project. We're about 3.5 years in. We've spent about $1.5 billion of a $2.5 billion project. So one of the big impacts is really around who does that work. And I know that's something that everyone on this panel is thinking about. Who gets the contracts? And how do you set targets that are reasonable and thoughtful, but also aggressive? I think others will be talking about that. So I think one of the bits that I'll talk about that people may see in person is really something about the airport itself that I think is kind of unique, where we've included accessibility experts in the process of design and construction to make the new airport designs more useful for all people. We invited accessibility subject matter experts to talk about best practices in design and barriers to accessibility. As an example, we listened to differently abled people from 12 partners like Basic Rights Oregon and Disability Rights Oregon and the Autism Society to help us implement projects like a terminal-wide master wayfinding signage. Essentially, you'll see that signs are bigger and brighter. They are both color-coded, and we have more opportunities for folks with low vision to understand how to navigate and to get access to the information they need to get where they want. We have visual information systems that are really for folks who are deaf or hard of hearing. We have our first all-user multi-stall restrooms at the airport. So we're really trying to think about who has been left out in the past and integrate our design and our construction thinking into that change. It's pretty exciting. I think folks will already be seeing some of that signage in the parking garages or in the parts of the airport that are especially new, like the E and the B concourses.
Thank you for that, Curtis. And let's now shift over to Aaron. Why don't you talk us through? You're just out of the gate. I want to say several weeks ago, all of us were able to see for the first time, I think, a really splendid rendering, which is always that exciting moment where you get to provide the community their first insight into what this could be. So talk us through, similarly, past the dollar signs, and with what equity lens are you applying the work that you're doing now?
Thank you. Well, I think as all of you know, OMSI is a nonprofit and one of the nation's leading science museums and a trusted educational resource for communities throughout Portland and Oregon. And we serve about 1.2 million people per year. So our approach is to co-develop everything from our strategic plans to exhibitions, public programs, school-based programs, with diverse partners so that we can make sure that we are engaging diverse audiences and really living our values. And so our mission and our partners are central to the OMSI District. And I think unlike a lot of other developments, the OMSI District is a mission-driven development because it has a mission-based nonprofit at the center. So the big idea is that the OMSI District will be a one-of-a-kind neighborhood and a new inclusive community destination with innovation and arts and culture and science learning at its heart. And so it encompasses about 24 acres on the Central East Side. And we think that there's possibility for up to 3 million square feet of new mixed-use development. We've worked with a lot of partners to contribute to the vision that you mentioned, Andrew, that was recently released. And I think a key and very exciting part of the project for us is our partnership with the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission and the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians. we are working with them to create a vision, and actually they are leading the visioning work to create a Center for Tribal Nations and a waterfront education park in the OMSI District that will recenter tribal presence on the Willamette River. And I think that would be an amazing opportunity for Portland. They have engaged with us an incredibly diverse group and an advisory committee that include local and tribal regional governments, Indigenous-led nonprofits, and businesses. And together, we really want to create a place where science education and experiences based on traditional ecological and cultural knowledge can lead to expanded connections and this place that we call home, and reconnect us with Native peoples of the region, reconnect us with the environment, and reconnect us with science education and learning that we know is such a key part of our future.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Erin. And now I want to shift to you, Kimberly. And, you know, it's interesting because the Broadway Corridor got some impressive coverage. I want to cite that Brookings article that came out on the process. So I think I'd be very curious your reflections from then till now. How are things going, and apply that equity lens into the conversations you're having now with the Broadway Corridor?
Thanks, Andrew. Well, just, you know, at the onset, the Broadway Corridor provides us with an opportunity to really reimagine a central part of the central city into a 21st century center of commerce that welcomes both new Portlanders as well as Portlanders who have long historic ties, they themselves or their communities, to the district. So Native Americans, African Americans, Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans have really deep ties to the district and have been central to the planning, engagement, and consideration. With up to 4 million square feet of new commercial and retail and residential development built up over the next 20 years, this district is going to link one of our oldest neighborhoods with one of our newest. So Old Town and the Pearl District will now be connected. And so behind me, you see what you're going to see. There's no longer going to be a visual impediment that will sit right between these two districts, but it will be physically connected. As you know, Prosper Portland and the Portland Housing Bureau jointly own the site, and we have an approved master plan for the site, which means that it's fully entitled and ready for development. And the visionary master plan, which was informed by ZGF architects, our 42-person racially and geographically diverse community advisory committee, and thousands of Portlanders in dozens of community engagement opportunities, includes a commercial main street along Northwest Johnson, which will be home to hundreds of units of affordable housing and opportunities for diverse local businesses. The master plan also includes part of the future Green Loop linear park with an elevated plaza at the approaches to the Broadway Bridge and additional North Park blocks designed to be really welcoming and inclusive spaces, as well as to leverage the transportation hub that's right there, light rail and streetcar and Union Station. In the next 12 months, you're going to see significant progress on the site as we take down the large former post office distribution center, and we pave the way for critical infrastructure investments in the next few years. And as has been talked about, equity really is at the center of the Broadway Corridor development. We completed a racial equity impact assessment at the very start of our work to make sure that equity and inclusion were at the core of every aspect of the project. We've learned a lot. We've made some missteps along the way, but we have incorporated a lot of feedback and learning as we've moved forward. And so what you're going to see over the coming years is that development is going to foster economic opportunity for Black, Indigenous, and people of color through quality employment opportunities, small business opportunities, development opportunities, and from construction through operations. The project includes a commitment that fully 1/3 of the housing will be affordable for people making 0 to 60% of median family income, and that there will be culturally specific outreach for communities with historic ties to the district. And just note that to date, more than 50% of the construction dollars have been earned by minority business enterprises, and more than 40% of the hours that have been worked on the site have been worked by people identifying as people of color. And in the next year, we'll be delivering on key terms of the community benefit agreement that we negotiated with Healthy Communities Coalition, which will include convening an oversight body. And we anticipate that because of the fantastic work that we're anticipating from Raymore Construction and Northwest Demolition and Dismantling and Northwest Infrastructure, more than 86% of the contracting work will be done by minority-owned business enterprises. So thanks.
Thank you. And for those of you who maybe were keeping score, you would have noted from both Aaron and from Kimberly some numbers, and I heard 3 million square feet, and then into Kimberly it was 4 million square feet. So if you're wondering, that this is an aggregate between the Broadway Corridor and OMSI District, the addition of 7 to 8 million square feet of space. And I just think that is an impressive amount of construction. And obviously in the midst of a stated housing crisis, these are key contributing factors to the way that we turn around that stated crisis. So thank you both for bringing that up. And now I want to get to the heart of the matter of the Rose City, and that is the Rose Corridor. And both geographically speaking, and I think as the nexus of transportation linkages, and so much more, Orlando, this project is highly visible. It's been through a lot of process. Where are things now, and how did that same equity lens get applied in the Rose Corridor conversations?
Great, thanks, Andrew. I guess your question about where things are now is the priority, I would say right now, is working on an IGA with public agencies on how we're going to move forward with this big, important, transformative project for this community. I'd be remiss if I didn't touch upon the history of this project. But the history of this project has a lot of scar tissue and a lot of negative impact that hindered communities that look like myself and Mr. Johnson on this call. And the realities is that it wasn't one agency that did that to that community. It was a host of agencies, and I would assume probably other private developers and individuals who decided that that freeway was going to go right there through that community and impact those families and those lives. So, but I would say that what's being stood up for that particular project going forward is something that is definitely transformational, and it definitely encompasses a strong wealth of equity components as well as environmental stewardship. Just to give some simple context, this is not much different than the I-205 auxiliary lane project. And a lot of people don't understand that because it was quiet, it wasn't in the media, and there wasn't all this contention around it. But the reality is it's not much different. In fact, I think it's a smaller stretch of lanes. And so we have to be honest about what's going on with that project. And I know it's a high profile project and it comes with a lot of emotion. But I think as the agency, ODOT, I'm speaking of, stood up, advisory bodies and community stakeholders and groups from the historical African-American community, I think there's been a lot of work that has gotten us to a great place. I think there's been some wake-up calls along the process that has, slowed some things down. But, I have to be honest, slowing things down is only going to cost us all more money in the end. And it's not I don't think it's the most sustainable way in which we move big, complex projects forward. This is a regional problem. Obviously, the Rose Corridor is right at the center of it, but our transportation issues and our growth models for our region are all interconnected. And so we have to make these investments now in order to support really the demand on the system and, more importantly, our economy. Because we cannot grow our economy and actually invest those resources into having this livable, sustainable future if we do not have the revenue. And it's kind of, a chicken and egg. But the reality is I think with these resources that the legislature has offered us and provided us for this region, since the Portland metro region did not have any real investment from the state in over 2 decades, I think right now is the time we have to get off the sidelines. And when I say we, I'm saying the business community. The business community has been beyond quiet as it relates to this project and the importance and significance of this project and how it ties to that network. When we talk about I was going to say Columbia River crossing, but there's so many names of it, but the bridge that is going to cross over the Columbia River in the future, as well as 205 in Abernathy, as well as 217, and we have a lot of significant issues in the region, but the reality is we have to start somewhere, and these things are not cheap, and the more we delay projects, the more expensive they become. And so for me personally, as someone who's been involved with this at the front and center, all I really care about is collaborating with other agencies, putting all the political nuances to the side. I'm not an elected official, so I have no dog in the political fight here. I'm just trying to do what's right for my city and my region, because I am from here and I'm fourth generation and I'm proud of it. But the reality is those things get in the way of moving things forward. And so the one thing I would like to say lastly, as it pertains to equity, Andrew, is that we have a very transformational opportunity here that nobody ever talks about. And everybody believes it's just some big project. But what ODOT has done here is they have positioned themselves to award a contract in the scale, because the number has yet to be determined, but it will end up being the largest contract that a Black-owned civil construction firm is awarded on the West Coast. Now, just let that sit with you and think about the volumes that that actually radiates with as it pertains to our demographics here in this community and what that means compared to our other larger cities that are a lot different than ours on the West Coast. So it isn't a small topic to just kind of brush aside, but there's a great opportunity in front of us to not only showcase how this region is investing in equity in ways that other places on this side of the country have not, but to also show how we're actually walking our talk as it relates to environmental stewardship, because the last thing we want to do is allow cars to sit in congestion every day. All that's going to do is contaminate our communities more. And so by getting the additional capacity there to get the auxiliary lanes on and get our freight movement and getting people moving up and down the I-5 corridor more efficiently, I think is going to be able to help us achieve that triple bottom line out of this project, which is an economic investment that's going to benefit the communities, social benefits that obviously going to provide jobs for those who need the most from this community, historical African-American community members, as well as business owners. And lastly, addressing some of our gravest climate concerns that we have right now in this region.
Thank you, Orlando. And I just, for those that are listening in to me, or how I observe or listen to these, because they are truly each and individual projects represent transformative projects in and of themselves. And then you look at them in aggregate, they are hyper transformative. But what's so fascinating is that, you know, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, the application of equity into the process and the focus on those outcomes, we would not be having that conversation right now. In fact, we wouldn't be even asking the question. And so I think it tells you a lot about how things are changing for the better, and that we're all learning as we go. So I just appreciate that if you hear each of the panelists speaking today, their core competencies are actually rooted in equity work. And that's what's so impressive here. So I just want to say thank you for doing that, and looking forward to the outcomes. And I want to mix up a little bit into drawing together the 2 transportation projects on the I-5-84 corridor here and talk about politics and barriers for a second, and then spread it out to the rest of the group here. But I say this because Orlando teased it out right now, but if you look at both the Rose Corridor and the bridge itself, this is the artery of the West Coast, stretching from Canada to Mexico. And the implications are, yes, local, but they are national in scale. And so let's talk about, and this is going to be to everybody. We're going to start with you two. What's going on with the politics? Because we're dealing with federal, state, and local issues. What are the barriers, impediments, and then the turning points and the ideas that can convert these challenges in these projects into reality? So why don't, Orlando, I'm going to start with you. What are the biggest hurdles in politics, and then how are we transforming those? And then I'm going to shift over to Greg.
Do I have to be honest, Andrew? Yeah. All right.
This is being recorded.
Okay, I know, and it's fine, because I stand by my word and my values. But the reality is this region has lost the art of compromise. And this region is lost right now. And this region is trying to find its way. And I think everybody is trying to look to somebody or something to be that beacon, that North Star that they can follow and work behind and achieve a vision for our future. But, you know, politics, I would say, is what's creating a lot of the problems as it pertains to the Rose Corridor project. People love to talk in Portland. People love to talk and people love to meet, and there's not a lot of action. I actually am just curious how much money is wasted on meetings and talking and process. Not to say that process isn't necessary, because you want to make sure you're uplifting and supporting those that don't have loud voices or that are being underserved or underutilized. But at the end of the day, I think we're obsessed with process and we waste a lot of time and money on things. And so it's hard for me to really think about what specifically political barriers are going to be the major hindrance to this specific project, because there's a plethora of them. The reality is that compromise is going to be it has to be the North Star, but that has to be a coalition of public agencies and elected officials that are willing to, put aside their personal motivations and their siloed approaches to say, look, this is what we're going to have to do collectively in order to get something done. And you're going to make people mad. And that's going to happen. And I mean, Portland is so polite, everybody's afraid to make people upset about something. And it's like, sometimes as leaders, you're going to make people upset. But as long as you have the right intention in mind and you're looking for the right outcomes, that really encompasses a triple bottom line. It's got an economic, a social, and environmental benefit. I think you should be fine. And so that, to me personally, is, I think, the lost art that we have in this region, which hinders our growth and opportunity for the future and to take on the opportunities that are coming to us right now as an economy. And if we can really dial in on that art of compromise and put aside our personal motivations and make every decision we make about we instead of me, I think we'll be successful.
I love that word. And I think could not be a better bridge to Greg and compromise between two states, right? And I think I can't even imagine being in your shoes to some degree. So let's hear from you. What's the politics of two different states, the federal government and all the local municipalities? No problem, right, Greg?
It's all easy peasy. So, well, I want to echo Orlando in that this, having worked across the country, and the passion here for different things is admirable. But at some point there has to be we need to get things done. And this bridge is a great example. It's been talked about for over a quarter of a century that this thing needs to happen. So the environmental issues are not getting any better. Doing nothing has not improved any of the conditions out there in this corridor. So we are being a bi-state program. We have two communities that see themselves differently. And so we have to take that into account. We have 10 partners, including the DOTs, the transit agencies, both cities, both ports, as well as the transit entities, as well as the metropolitan planning agencies on each side of the river. So the politics of this are extremely complex, and it's been dubbed that we have a trust deficit between entities in this region. That, if one partner walks in the room soaking wet and says it's raining cats and dogs, the others are going to have to look out the window to make sure that it really is raining. So we have to overcome that. And I think our project is going to be a way to set a template for how folks can solve large regional projects across the river on each side, how they can talk to each other and how they can get things done. So that's one of the important things that we are looking at. We have structures in our program. We have a bi-state legislative committee that includes legislators from both Washington and Oregon that are giving us oversight, and our commitment to them is no surprises. We're keeping them up to date. We've been meeting monthly. I've been having phone calls in between those meetings to keep folks informed of what's going on. We've been talking to the congressional offices, and the congressional offices in both states did a fabulous job with the infrastructure package and making sure that this area was well represented in that language, that and for the grant programs that are going to be there, this area will have access to those funds to get things done. So this is a complex thing. And But the one thing that I tell folks that can overcome the skepticism and overcome the nasty infighting is being transparent. So our program has committed to being transparent. And sometimes it is tremendously hard. We've had to walk back a path that we thought we could go down because we were being transparent with folks. And our federal partner said, if you go down that path, you're going to hit a brick wall and start over. So we walked it back. We told all our partners what happened and why it happened. So we're trying to be tremendously transparent to overcome some of the dysfunction in the partnerships that have been well before they even heard of Greg Johnson. This existed, and it's something that has a region for this region to prosper into the future, for it to solve the climate issues, the equity issues, the transportation issues. We have to find a way to have those conversations broadly and reach consensus. And I agree with Orlando. We're not always going to agree. We're not always going to make people happy, but there are some problems that need to be solved. So the politics are fun, and it's one of the reasons I chose to come here, because it was not easy. So I'm enjoying meeting new people and sharing the vision for what this program can do for this region going into the future. And I think we will get the knot untied on this thing this go round.
I appreciate anyone that says the politics are fun. So that bodes well for this project. And I appreciate the spirit, because we're going to need the tenacity to get this thing done. So thank you. And I want to pair again, Kimberly and Aaron, just because in my mind, I see similarities in the fact that you have mixed use developments that are moving forward. And talk us through what's the key things that are keeping you awake at night, and from the politics and barrier side of the equation. So let's start with Aaron, and then we'll shift to Kimberly.
Thank you. I think the key thing is something that Orlando said really well, which is this idea of being future oriented and future thinking at the same time that we know that there are really immediate needs that need to be addressed, and that those are hard and they take hard work to address, but we have to do both. And I think it's possible to do both. And I think that for OMSI in particular, we play a particular role, and this project plays a particular role in the revitalization of the Central East Side and the way that this area can grow and continue to develop. We already know this is a hot spot for innovation in the city, for manufacturing, for new business and incubators, maker spaces. And we see that we can contribute to continuing to grow that for the benefit of not only this district, but the entire city and the state. I think one other real fundamental challenge that we have is that the nature of this project is different in that it's being driven by a private nonprofit that does not receive city or state funding for operations. And as a result, I think what it will take to really make this district a reality is an innovative new economic model for development that includes nonprofit, culturally specific organizations and partners such as the tribes and indigenous communities that I mentioned, and the city and public sources. And so we've really valued that the city has been a critical partner with us along the way in this project and the discussions to date and getting ready to submit the master plan. And we've really also valued that other partners have come to the table, including PGE, Portland Community College, Portland Opera. And now we are having broader conversations. The state has come to the table with some money for an early transportation investment in the district. But that's the kind of creativity that I think will really be needed for us to develop a new economic model and also figure out at the end who benefits and how can we all benefit.
Kimberly.
Yeah, so we've been really fortunate to have Mayor Wheeler's leadership throughout the project and to have support from City Council as well. And so that was instrumental in putting together the funding and finance plan for the infrastructure. But I just want to speak to what feels like the elephant in the room, which is this is a public-private partnership and the strength of the market is critical. We will not be able to, even with all of the public resources in the world, be able to develop this unless we have the market conditions that enable that. This is not a surprise. We always anticipated that we were going to have a multi-business cycle development. 4 million square feet of development does not get taken down in Portland in one business cycle or even two. This is a significant scale of development. But we are in a particularly challenging part for the phase for commercial development right now, as we all know. So we are in some ways fortunate that we have the level of site preparation that we need to do in terms of taking down the post office facility, putting in Northwest Johnson and Kearney, so that, for the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to be focused on site prep that is not reliant on the private market. But we are hopeful that we'll see an increased demand for new residential and commercial office space by the mid-2020s. Right now we are in a period of reassessment because the market was impactful in terms of our first developer's decision not to move forward. And so we're really looking at, given the market conditions and given what we forecast for the next 3 to 5 years, how do we really achieve our vision with significant density, with significant public amenities, with significant community benefits, while also reducing the public and the private financial risk. So in the next few months, we'll have a clear sort of roadmap forward in terms of the process to select a new development partner and any changes that we need to make. So that's really the major issue that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Kimberly. And but for both you and Aaron, for both of your projects, I do think the bigger question, right, is how the sort of Portland's reputation, its market conditions, I think are appropriately called out, will embrace what you're trying to get done. And I think it's admirable what you're going for, and I think it's going to require community support beyond just the basic business aspects of this, because we're all in on seeing your success. So thank you for sharing that. And I want to get over to Curtis. And Curtis, you're the one that's got shovels in the ground. You've got things happening. So obviously, you know exactly what you're doing, and you've never had any issues or challenges related to construction.
Exactly right. And maybe this is a little to the two previous questions. I'm with Orlando. I love the big ideas, and we've just got to get some of this work done. I've been pretty vocal about the bridge, and having been through this in an iteration before, all my chips are on the table with Greg and his team. We've got to get this done. And so one of the benefits we have out at the port is we have a commission that's very supportive of the direction. We've been highly communicative. We've got some great partners at Hoffman Skanska out doing the work for us. So yeah, we are deep into the project. I think something that's facing all of us is costs increase. And with the exception of lumber, which is a little bit fluky over the last year because prices were up so much last year and now they're relatively down, everything else is through the roof, double-digit inflation across the board on steel pipe, on fabricated structural metal bar, on copper and brass. Everything is up double digits and more. And so I think as everyone's thinking about construction, one of the big questions is how do you manage that cost pressure and how do you get people to stay on the job and be healthy? We've lost between 10 and 20% of our contractor teams to COVID over the last year and a half. It's just hard work, and that means your schedule stretches out and costs increase. So, there's a lot of pressure on this work right now, but it is pretty exciting. And one of the benefits I do have having a supportive commission is that we don't mess around too much. We're just going for it, and we still have to deal with these hurdles that come up around COVID, around cost increase, but we're moving forward. It's pretty exciting.
Curtis, thanks for pointing out the issues of cost. It couldn't be more appropriate. I think it was today or yesterday that we marked a 7% overall cost increase over the last year, driven by inflation on a national scale, which we haven't seen that sort of inflationary pressure since the 1970s and 80s. And so I think we're all going to be struggling with that. We know it impacts labor issues, but of course the supply chain has been completely disrupted. And for the first time, people are competent in supply chain issues when never before did we have to ask these questions and look to where we're going to be sourcing our products. So it is one more layer of complexity on what are already clearly complex issues. Greg, I see you have your hand up, so why don't we pop to you and just I'll shift into my next question once you've added in.
So I just wanted to echo what Curtis was saying regarding costs, and Orlando made the point earlier. The first iteration of the Columbia River crossing, which now is the interstate bridge replacement, the estimates were around 3.5 billion. Now we are, for a similar type project, we're talking about 10 years have elapsed, and we're talking about $1 billion more. And all of these things, time truly is money. And we have to get this figured out before this thing becomes so big it can't be done. So we're trying to move this thing on in a timely manner. We have some large asks, getting back to the politics of this, of both state legislatures for the local funding match for each state. And before that ask was approximately 450 million from each state. Now we're asking upwards of $1 billion from each state. So that just puts the timeliness issue up front, and the politics around these type of large infrastructure programs are just critical to get it right and get these things moving and get them done.
Those are large numbers you're throwing out there, and I think it's just reflective of when setbacks do occur, what the real costs are. And just thank you for sharing that. And on that note, I want to get into sort of a final question from me here, and because I think this is going to be a challenge to all of you, and more to those that are listening and engagement. So that's the framing. 10 years from now, all of your let's be optimistic. Your projects are done. What are the impacts that these will have to people? What will they experience? What will everyday Portlanders who may never have engaged with you or these projects, what will they experience? What will the outcomes be? Because we need to paint the picture of the final product, because it's so much easier when you're in these moments to sort of bring things down or to pick it out or to be in the weeds a little too much, and we forget what the final product is going to be. So paint us the picture of the final product, and then I want you all to challenge us on how we support your work. So what's the one thing, everybody listening today and those members who we will share this video with, what can we do to help you? So I'm going to go back, starting with Orlando and cycling through in a similar direction. So paint the picture, and what can we do to support you?
All right. Wow. Going right in for the kill, huh, Mr. Home? I like that question because ever since I started on the department's commission, one of the things I was very adamant about with staff and even the former leadership and even into this new leadership was really about the importance of restoring trust. If you don't have trust, you have nothing, especially as a public agency. And right now, what we're seeing in society is what we've seen over the past, I would say 24 months, which has been, exemplified all over the media heavily, is what we're seeing is a divorce between individuals and institutions in terms of power and accountability. And people are taking it to the streets right now. So we have to accept the fact that there is no trust, but what are we going to do to restore that trust? And as representatives of these public agencies, that should be our number one focus at this point. If that could be the catalyst, if these projects, when they're complete and successful, and we got that $10 billion investment and it's hopefully multiplied into other investments and there's more prosperity as a result of that, hopefully that could become the catalyst to the next thing that we're all going to do. Because I say we all are going to do, because it can't be these piecemeal approaches to projects. It has to be a collective collaboration of projects for our region. And I'd say region intentionally because these are regional issues. These are not really just City of Portland issues. These are regional challenges that we're facing right now. And so if I were to leave everybody with like some kind of idea where we're at 10 years from now, I would say that the Portland Metro region becomes the international model for sustainable economic development. And delegation groups from all over the world come here to see it firsthand. And when you have that kind of attention and that kind of traction, of course, Curtis's airport gets super busy, but guess what happens when that type of tourism takes place? Economic prosperity. And so I think we have to be very conscious about where we want to go and what sacrifices we're going to have to make individually and collectively in order to get there. But I think sustainable economic development is our opportunity for the future.
Right on. Thank you, Orlando. Kimberly, let's go to you.
Couldn't agree more. I think we believe by 2032 that Broadway Corridor could be one of Portland's next great places. This could be a place that would be important for those who built it, those who live there, those who are employed there, or the business owners who open your first retail shop there. It'll house a true range of incomes and help address the affordable housing crisis. 10 years from now, we will have delivered on a community benefit agreement with partners that has become hopefully a model for incorporating equity and community in large-scale public-private partnerships. We will have helped address the climate action objectives. And I think importantly, if this growth, which we know is going to happen, needed to be absorbed in a lower density part of our city, that would have the requirement of millions of dollars of infrastructure of investments to serve the same number of jobs and families with greater climate, transportation, and displacement impacts for our region. So this is really an essential part of our equitable and resilient growth management and economic development strategy as a city. And the way that you can help is to keep engaged, really help support us by expressing enthusiasm. And I think you're going to hear more about how to stay engaged, but that's the bottom line for us.
Thank you, Kimberly. And to you, Aaron.
Thank you. I think that in 10 years from now, what we really hope to see is a new neighborhood that's inclusive and community driven and attracts people from around the state and the region to OMSI, but also to our partners that are co-located here. We want to see new OMSI and partner-driven STEM education and workforce development with PCC and others, so that we're really growing our own talent here in the science, technology, engineering, and math areas, and that we're attracting kids and youth who didn't ever imagine themselves being in that space, but have all the skills and the talents to work in that field. We want to see a recentered tribal presence on the Willamette River and a new waterfront education park. And I think with each of these projects, and definitely with the OMSI District, they are a really unique opportunity because of the scale to live our commitment to combating climate change and to taking action in a real way. And specifically in the OMSI District, we want this area to be a large-scale demonstration project of next generation urban design. And we think we have a really unique opportunity to teach the public about it and to engage the public in climate change and climate action so that they're taking action in their everyday lives.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Aaron. And to you, Curtis.
I'd say three big things strike me about 10 years from now. We really want PDX to reflect people's values here in the region. And so first, we're really focused. Folks are aware of this 9-acre new roof that we're building out at the end of the north runway. That's 100% sourced from forests here in Oregon and Washington, from small family woodlots, tribal nations, the Yakima, the Coquille, and the Skokomish, from the Nature Conservancy and from community forests. So really a local look and feel. We're also really focused on energy efficiency. We're going to expand the size of the airport inside by 40%, but we're going to decrease energy use by 50%, something I think people will be really proud of. And it's really expensive to do, but the long-term benefits are really extraordinary. And then finally, folks might have seen it in Concourse B already, seeing more of the rich diversity of the region inside the airport. This great art from Ryan Feddersen, who's a Tacoma-based artist and a member of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation. Great look and feel kind of stuff that people can see who is here, who is represented, and who did the work. And so really excited about the future. The thing we'll ask is patience. Look, this is going to be a rough couple of years out there, and I volunteered for a couple of customer service shifts over the holidays. People are strung out in the airport right now, and it's just going to be bumpy, and I just hope people can be patient with us.
I appreciate that, Curtis. I love your airport though. So, Greg, take us home.
So in 10 years, I think folks will see a multimodal corridor that modernizes and brings in the best of transportation technology to solve some of the issues such as climate, greenhouse gas production. I think giving people options to cross the river in different modes and greener modes is one of our underlying principles. But also, I think taking folks from poverty to prosperity through some of our equity initiatives to make sure that when we do pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, that we are reaching out to communities that have not traditionally been a part of the equation. So someone who is now in junior high, by the time this bridge is done, we're hoping that person will at the end of this be a journeyman level and be able to have a income and a career that will sustain them going into the future. So those are the things that we see for this program and for this corridor: a cleaner, greener corridor and a smart corridor. But how people can help, we need to have voices, and all of us experience. It's generally the naysayers who come out and rail against the project, but there are folks who believe in what we're doing, but their voices have been, somewhat quiet to this point. So we need folks to come out and talk about what the future of this region can look like with a replaced I-5 bridge. So my only ask is get out and talk to, come to our meetings, let your voice be heard, talk to your state representatives, to your Congress people about how important this is to this region.
I like that you humanized it, because there really is a lot of individual stories that will be written by each of these projects that we just don't know about right now. And so let's keep our eyes on the future. And to all of you, I just appreciate that you're doing this work and you're driving your organizations to get it done, because we need it to get done. And this, in aggregate, the transformative powers of these projects are just profound and positive. So thank you for all the work you're doing. We could talk endlessly about this. I know there's a number of folks that submitted questions in the Q&A. We will get this out to each of these panelists, but if you're at home, please give them a massive virtual round of applause for all the work that they're doing, and sign up to help and get active is my message to each of you. So thank you to our panelists, and to all of you that are attending today. Come back February 16th for the State of the Economy. It is our annual report out to the community about the regional condition of the jobs and the cost of living and every other thing you want to know about the greater Portland region. So with that, I want to thank everyone for being here, for the incredible team at the Alliance for putting this together, for the good work of these panelists and your teams as well. And with that, everyone, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day.